In 2009, when it was first exhibited at the Rubin Museum in New York, people formed long queues to behold this enigmatic codex. Certain academic circles appraise it as a mystical transcript, while a cadre of professors described the symbolic dialogues within the text as a personal diary of shamanic visions, far removed from scientific methodology. Others critiqued it as a dangerous amalgamation of science and mysticism, asserting that the book's structure appeared excessively intuitive and irrational for scholarly pursuits. Some experts even contended that the publication of this work would tarnish the author's reputation, as it presented scientific experiments in a romanticized manner within a mythologized narrative. Yet, prior to the display, conservators, historians, and researchers had devoted more than 2 decades to restoring every page and meticulously reconstructing lost sections in a preparation for its publication. The inks and papers employed in the manuscript were selected from specialized materials reminiscent of medieval illuminations. It seemed not the product of an ordinary psychologist, but rather the sacred codex of a forgotten order. All these polemics and the monumental preservation process further thickened the veil of mystery surrounding the book, transforming it into one of the most extraordinary artifacts in the history of psychology. This tome, safeguarded by an ancient aura, is none other than Carl Jung's Red Book. Its formal title, Liber Novus, Latin for New Book. This manuscript was the most influential unpublished work in the history of psychology. It is a massive red leather-bound folio created by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung between 1914 and 1930. For decades, it was locked away in a Swiss bank vault, hidden from the world by his heirs. This was not a diary, nor was it a scholarly text. It was, by Jung's own admission, the prima materia, the numinous beginning from which his entire life's work would be derived. It is a 16-year confrontation with the unconscious, a meticulous, handwritten, and exquisitely illustrated record of his quest to salvage his soul. The book's legendary status is a direct result of its 80-year suppression. The decision by Jung's family to hide the book, fearing it would damage his scientific reputation, paradoxically transformed it. It became an object of intense speculation, the holy grail of the unconscious, a secret book that supposedly held the key to understanding the enigmatic psychologist. When it was finally published in a stunning facsimile edition on October 7th, 2009, it was not a quiet, posthumous academic release. It was a global landmark event and a watershed moment that fundamentally recontextualized one of the 20th century's most important thinkers. The Red Book is the ultimate Jungian object, a work built on paradox. It is a deeply, very personal record of one man's inner journey, yet it contains the foundations for his universal theory of the collective unconscious. It is a document that Jung himself feared was madness, yet the very process of its creation became his antidote to psychosis. It was hidden to protect his scientific persona, but its publication revealed him as a mystic and artist, securing his relevance for the 21st century. To understand Jung, one must understand this book. To understand how the Red Book was written, one must first understand the conditions of 1913. Carl Jung, then, in his late 30s, was at the apex of his career, the anointed crown prince of psychoanalysis, and the chosen successor to his mentor, Sigmund Freud. But this relationship, which had popularized the idea that a person's interior life merited dedicated exploration, was about to catastrophically implode. The broken alliance, Jung and Freud. The split, which culminated in 1913, was acrimonious. It was not merely a professional disagreement, it was the psychological loss of a mentor and father figure. The ideological rift was profound. Freud remained dogmatic, insisting that sexual repression was the sole cause of neuroses. Jung, however, felt this was too limiting. He wanted to broaden the concept of libido to include all expressions of psychic energy. And most heretically, he wanted to explore the black tide of occultism, spirituality, and mysticism, realms Freud had dismissed. The break was total. Jung was ostracized by the psychoanalytic community, resigning from his post as chair of the International Psychoanalytical Association. This professional excommunication created a profound vacuum. The framework he had used to understand the psyche, Freudian psychoanalysis, was gone. His mentor was gone. He was, for the first time, utterly alone, cast into an intellectual and spiritual abyss. This vacuum demanded to be filled, forcing Jung to create his own system from scratch. The massive midlife crisis. The professional crisis mirrored a personal one. Jung had, by all external measures, achieved everything he had ever set out to do. He had professional success, wealth, fame, marriage, and children. But he was forced to a critical juncture where he recognized this was not enough. In achieving these ego-centered outer accomplishments, he felt he had lost touch with his soul, the apocalyptic visions, and into this personal and professional void, the unconscious erupted. Beginning in late 1913, Jung was afflicted by a flood of apocalyptic visions. These were not gentle dreams, they were terrifying, waking hallucinations. He saw a sea of blood sweeping across Europe, stopping at the Alps. He heard an inner voice assuring him that these visions were completely real and that they will come to pass. As a psychiatrist, Jung's first terrifying conclusion was that he was succumbing to schizophrenia. He feared he was having a near psychotic breakdown, the very madness he treated in his patients at the Burgholzli Clinic. The crucible of war. The conditions for the Red Book were set by the creative illness that followed. Then, in August 1914, the Great War began. For Jung, this was a moment of shocking, terrible validation. He realized his visions had depicted not what would happen to him, but to Europe. They were a precognition of a collective event. This realization was transformative. His madness was not his alone. It was a mirror of the collective psychosis of the continent, a shadow side that Europe was descending into. His personal journey now had a profound collective importance. Faced with this enigmatic stream that threatened to break me, Jung made a momentous decision. As he later reflected, when falling, dive. He chose to turn toward the breakdown, to treat it as an opportunity for self-analysis and self-therapy. This decision, to dive into the abyss and document what he found, is the beginning of the Red Book, The Spirit of the Depths, a new method for knowing the soul. Jung's journey begins with a foundational philosophical conflict that defines the entire book. The battle between two opposing forces, the spirit of this time and the spirit of the depths. The spirit of the times is the spirit of the modern world. It is horizontal, rational, scientific, and ignorant of the reality of the psyche. It is concerned only with use and value. This was the spirit of Freudian dogmatism, of the university, and of the ego-centered life Jung had been leading. The spirit of the depths is its timeless and eternal opposite. It is ancient, vertical, downward, and solitary. It took away Jung's belief in science and forced him to seek meaning over utility. Jung's crisis was a conscious choice to abandon the spirit of the times, which had robbed him of his soul, and follow the spirit of the depths into the unknown. The Red Book is the log of that voyage. The Black Books, an active imagination. This journey required a new method, The how of the Red Book's creation begins with 6 black journals. Known as the Black Books from 1913 to 1917, these were the raw, unedited, and more for scholars' diaries, where Jung first recorded the flood of images. To gain control over this chaos, he developed the technique that would become a cornerstone of his psychology, active imagination. This was not passive dreaming. Active imagination is a deliberate, 4-step meditation technique that forms the central action of the Red Book. 1. Relaxation, dropping into a twilight consciousness, a waking dream, where the conscious mind is quieted. 2. Observation, passively allowing images, figures, and fantasies to bubble up from the unconscious. 3. Engagement. This is the critical step. Instead of just observing, the ego actively engages with the figures, opening a dialogue and asking questions. Jung personified these inner contents. 4. Documentation. Recording the experience through writing and art. The Black Books were the raw documentation of this process. The Red Book is the curated, edited, and artistic fair copy of this material, where Jung sought to translate the emotions into images and integrate them. By personifying the forces of his unconscious and relating to them, he could strip them of their power and gain a measure of control. A cast of the inner world dialogues with the self. The Red Book is not a monologue, it is a mythological novel structured as a vaguely Homeric progression of dialogues. Jung's psyche personified itself into a cast of inner figures, each representing a different aspect of his mind. These encounters are the very birth of his theory of archetypes, the wise old man, Logos, Philemon. A central figure who emerges is a wise old man. He first appears as the biblical prophet Elijah, but later evolves into Philemon, a pagan magician with the kingfisher wings. Philemon's psychological function is clear. He is the archetype of the spirit, representing Logos and superior insight. Having lost his outer mentor, Freud, Jung's psyche generated an inner one. Philemon served as Jung's ghostly guru, a figure of superior insight and matured psyche who guided him through the terrifying depths, the soul, Eros, Salome. Accompanying Philemon is his daughter, Salome. Jung's vision subverts the sensual and provocative image of her time. His Salome is a blind, beautiful maiden and demure young woman. Psychologically, Salome is the anima, the feminine aspect of the male psyche. She represents Eros, instinctual life, and the irrationality of the soul. She is the soul that Jung felt he had lost. The Red Book is, in large part, the story of Jung, the hyper-rational, logos-driven intellectual, learning to listen to and integrate this feminine Eros principle which he had scorned. Other archetypal encounters. The inner landscape was populated by a vast cast including Izdubar, a giant representing an encounter with the hero Gilgamesh and the power of primal myth. Siegfried, the Germanic hero, a potent hero archetype from his own culture. The serpent, a wise oracular creature representing the archetype of transformation and the painful psychic death and rebirth necessary for individuation, the magician Ha. A figure representing the ego's capacity for creative transformation and the need to harness the power of the imagination. Forging Liber Novus, a work of art and magic. The how of the Red Book's creation extends to its physical form. This was not a book to be written, it was a book to be forged. The very form of the book is a deliberate, powerful rejection of the spirit of the times. In the 20th century, a scientist published articles he did not do what Jung did. Jung commissioned a bookbinder to make him a huge red leather book with blank pages. This massive folio-sized volume, measuring approximately 12 by 15.5 inches and weighing nearly 10 pounds, was embossed on its spine with its formal title, Liber Novus. Jung's process was a conscious act of ritual. He modeled the book after the illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages. This artistic labor was the integration he was seeking. He was not just recording his unconscious, he was illuminating it, binding the chaos of the black books into the sacred order of a holy text. The calligraphy for 16 years from 1914 to 1930, Jung labored. He meticulously transcribed the draft material from the black books into the folio. He did this using an ornate Gothic script, a form of exquisite calligraphy that turns the text itself into an art object. Of the 205 pages Jung completed, 81 are pure calligraphic text, the stunning artwork. The book is an explosion of startlingly brilliant and stunning artwork. Jung illustrated his calligraphic text with paintings, decorative initials, and ornamental borders. He composed these carefully, starting with pencil drawings. The images are abstract and brightly hued. 53 pages are full images, and 71 contain both text and images. Many of these images are intricate circular diagrams, or mandalas. Jung saw the mandala as one of the oldest human religious symbols and an archetype of wholeness, a symbolic representation of the self. He finally discontinued work on the book around 1930, having filled 191 of the volume's 600 plus pages. The work was left unfinished, a testament to a self-experimentation that had served its purpose. The prima materia, where Jungian psychology was born. This is the central secret of the Red Book. It is not a product of Jungian psychology, it is the source of it. It is the foundation for everything that followed. As Jung stated in 1957, all my works, all my creative activity has come from those initial fantasies and dreams. That was the stuff and material for more than only one life. Everything later was merely the outer classification, the scientific elaboration, and the integration into life. But the numinous beginning, which contained everything, was then. The Red Book is the data. The collected works are the analysis. It is the raw material from which his distinctive theories were mined. Theme 1. The collective unconscious and archetypes. In the hellish depths of his own mind, Jung did not just find his memories. He found mythological narratives, symbols, and universal psychological patterns that were not from his personal life. This was the origin of his most famous and controversial concept, the collective unconscious. He posited a deeper layer of the psyche, present in the minds of all individuals and shared by all humanity. The patterns of behavior or symbolic imagery that populated this shared mind are the archetypes. The figures he met, Philemon, Salome, the serpent, were the archetypes. Theme 2, the shadow. The terrifying nature of his visions was a direct confrontation with the darker aspects of human nature. He named this the shadow. It is the inferior man with his desires and emotions that the conscious ego suppresses. He learned that no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. Failure to do so, to avoid any feelings of discomfort, leads to disastrous consequences, such as projecting one's inferior side onto others. which is precisely what he saw Europe doing in WLD Theme 3, Individuation. The entire Red Book is the story of Jung's own individuation. This became the central concept of his psychology. He defined it as the lifelong process of integrating the various aspects of the self into a unified whole. It is the journey to become one's true self by marrying the ordered to the chaos and achieving a higher development of the personality. The Red Book is the prototype of this universal human quest. Theme 4, the self and the rebirth of God. The Red Book is ultimately a theological document. It is Jung's profound answer to the 20th century's crisis of meaning, famously articulated by Nietzsche. God is dead. The positivistic paradigm and excessive rationalistic attitude of the spirit of the times had killed the outer God of dogma. Jung's journey shows him negate the God he was taught and descend into the abyss. What he finds there is a new image of God. He finds a living God within the psyche. He concludes that the God image is a symbol of the self, the totality of the psyche. The real therapy, he concluded, is this approach to the numinous, an inner experience that provides meaning in a nihilistic age. The legacy of a book that lives. The publication of the Red Book was a landmark event that sparked a renewed interest in Jung's life and work. It became a breakout bestseller, proving that the spirit of the times was at last ready to listen to the spirit of the depths. Its release has re-evaluated his place in the history of psychology. It proves what Jung always claimed, that his ideas were not speculation, but were based on experience. The book reveals the raw material behind the scientific collected works, bridging the gap between psychology and religion, and reframing Jung as a profound mystic, visionary, and artist. In a way, the 2009 publication posthumously completes Jung's own individuation, the two persons he knew himself to be, the public scientist and the private mystic, were finally integrated. The part of his psyche that he locked away, the Red Book itself, was brought into the light, making his public persona whole. The Red Book is not a historical document. It is a living one. It serves as a warning or prophecy against the dangers of a world that had lost touch with its mythic and spiritual roots, a world of endless trivial distractions, its blogs and tweets and chiming cell phones. More than anything, it stands as a timeless inspiration and guide, and a powerful example of the courage and integrity required to confront the depths of the psyche. The Red Book is, in the end, an invitation, a challenge to the modern reader to turn from the spirit of the times, look inside, and find the sources of our own most important discoveries.